What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boys over here at Three Man Weave. I am your lovely ZD in the building here with CJ, and we coming at you guys live, man, on a Monday. It's August 24th, and we're doing another in-person episode. Your boys are bringing the off-season files today. Today, we're doing the Golden State Warriors, CJ, which we are excited to get into. Last episode, we did Detroit. But CJ, how are you feeling today, man? We just got done editing the vlog for Opinionated. We went to DreamCon, a month and a half ago, and we've been working on editing the vlog. And so me and you were chilling, and we were just doing that. But how are you feeling today, my man?
Feeling good, bro. Like you said, just we're able to finish that up. It's been something that, not right after we came back from DreamCon, but something we've been working on, the past couple weeks, months. So it's been dope seeing what that has turned into, and then obviously being able to shoot these in-person pods, like we always say, just adds another, I don't know, just a tone and dynamic, and we can see each other. It's different, man, because like we said, like we do it virtually, so it's different, especially when we're in person. And honestly, this is what we started off doing, it in person. So
a lot of times.
Yeah, like we've had the reps, and obviously just being able to see your reactions, and just the vibe is good. So I feel like the audience is able to feel that through the video or audio, if that's what you listen to. So we appreciate y'all, and I'm doing good, bro. It's Monday, like you said, and just being able to chop up about some, with some hoops with you in person. And we just got done working on a vlog, so I'm having a good day, bro. Can't complain.
That's what's up. Me too. Yesterday I was with you too. We were shooting the ads for Outlier.
Yes.
You guys go download that app.
Yep.
But we appreciate y'all's time. Welcome back for the returning viewers. If you're new here, thanks for checking us out. But yes, I am doing good. I'm excited to get into the Golden State Warriors offseason file. Very interesting offseason so far. I was talking to you about it before we got on the pod. This one should be interesting. Some people may not like the takes that we have per se. Warriors fans, no disrespect to y'all. CJ and I both think that y'all are going to be competitive this season. It's just, what is that going to look like? We're going to break that down here in a second. But yeah, man, excited to get into the Golden State Warriors offseason file. Long time coming, but yeah, just Steph Curry, all the boys, man, they gotta figure it out, because they had an interesting offseason so far. And yeah, we gotta break it down, man. We gotta break it down for the people, because this is gonna be a good one. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah,
and we'll just get it started.
Yeah, we like Z said, we start the off-season files with who they're building around, and we have three players from the Golden State Warriors that we believe that the Golden State Warriors are building around. And I think we know who the number one player is, right?
Yes, sir.
I think it's
his name.
One of the greatest of all time.
Best shooter ever.
Best shooter of all time. Some would say the best point guard ever. I'm up for that conversation. We love
conversation
for sure. But it's the one and only, man, Steph Curry, bro. Golden State timeline, Z, is really only measured by how much elite basketball Stephen Curry has left. And I feel like we've talked about it. I brought it up in the Denver Nuggets offseason files, when you have that type of player that gives you the confidence to still believe in your hopes of becoming a champion again. And Steph Curry just brings that to the team. And I feel like that's
for sure.
Like the reason why he's here. It's the reason why he's, one of the greatest of all time, and what he's just been able to do throughout his whole career, even as he's gotten older. I feel like he's obviously, his game has elevated, and we just expect it at this point, and it's something that year in and year out, he's always going to do it. And obviously health has been the threes,
leadership,
the playmaking.
The conditioning. I feel like that's an underrated part of his game.
Absolutely.
Now he's running all over the place, man. He did in 2016, like when he won his unanimous MVP. One of the scary things about Steph Curry was anytime he would cross essentially the logo, starting behind half court, I mean, he was a threat to pull up. And that was back when people didn't really know he had it like that.
Yeah.
But now, everybody knows, and they chase him all around the court. I'm expecting that next season. I know you are too. But for me, it's been the conditioning that's been like top S tier. But yeah, he's just been the consistent heartbeat of their team for the last 11, 12 years. So
yeah, it's been incredible, bro. Just being able to see his career, what it's turned into, and just
he doesn't need an intro.
No, absolutely. But At 38 years old, Curry still averaged 26.6 points, 4.7 assists, and 3.6 rebounds this past season, earning the 12th All-Star selection of his career. He also produced back-to-back explosions of 46 and 49 points in November, becoming one of only 2 players in NBA history to record consecutive 45-point games at age 37 or older.
Yeah.
Was that against the Spurs?
I was gonna say, do you remember he had that and one?
Yep.
But I remember that game that we saw. It was against the Clippers. We were live for it. When he's in a zone, there's really nothing. I was like,
yeah. I know exactly.
Should they be doubling, whatever?
And I was like,
yeah. But like he's just even at his age, man, he's still doing it. You know, I would argue first team, second team, all NBA type caliber player, even at 38 years old.
Absolutely.
Really only doing stuff that we've seen LeBron do, if we're being honest. I mean, not many players that get into their deep 30s are contributing at this high of a level. In fact, we've never really seen this before outside of the current era that we're in, you know, the Kawhi Leonards, the Kevin Durant's, the LeBron Jameses, and of course the Steph Currys. You know, again, he's going to average 25 next season. We know the volume's going to be there, especially from three, but they need him to be an MVP next year. I know we're about to get into it, but if they have any chance of being competitive, they need him to be the Steph Curry of the past, you know, even more than he's been recently for them to get over the hump.
Yeah, no, exactly, man. It's
it's interesting.
It's crazy too, because like I remember him doing that because that was when the Spurs were starting to get their footing. You know, they were winning a lot of games at that point. Obviously, they were the second seed in the West. On the road.
Yeah.
Like it was dope because it's Steph Curry.
I'm glad you remember that.
I remember that vividly. So shout out to that. Shout out to Steph Curry, man. But that kind of scoring combined with the intention he demands several feet beyond the 3-point line, creates open shots before he even touches the ball. Like you just mentioned, just anytime he passes half court, everyone's face guarding him the whole game. So that obviously, you know what I mean? That's
you have to.
Yeah.
If not, he's gonna hit.
He's gonna pull up. Yeah, he's gonna pull up in your face.
Exactly.
So, the 4-time champion, all-time 3-point leader, and 2-time MVP is under contract through the 2026-2027 season after signing 1 year, $62.6 million extension, keeping the franchise fully committed to his remaining window. Like you just mentioned, you know what I mean? Like
$60 million.
He's that type
of player. Of
it. He's the reason why the Warriors are relevant, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and I do want to bring something up. For people who may not know, that might be new viewers, but the reason it's a 1-year deal, he's the first player that the Warriors are building around. He's been their franchise player, like I said, for 12 years. At age 38, you can't sign a 38-year-old player to a 3-year deal. That's just not a smart move. That's why the Warriors are basically from here on out going to sign him to 1-year deals and keep re-upping. I don't think Steph Curry is going anywhere, so that's not necessarily a worry. Technically, he's a free agent next season.
Yep.
But yeah, the $60 million, I mean, even if it was $70 million, I believe Steph Curry's worth it. It's just at this point, for what the Warriors are, there are some question marks surrounding whether or not his value is really worth it at this current stage of his career, just based off the rest of the roster. It's not him.
Yeah.
It's everyone else around him and the current construction of the team. That's really the only like detriment you could say to Steph Curry. I mean, his game has no flaws. There's no holes. For people who don't know, he's literally the greatest shooter ever. Will probably be the greatest shooter that we see in our life.
Yeah.
It's going to take somebody to come into the NBA and go absolutely insane for them to pass Curry. But saying that, he does need a more developed roster than a LeBron James or a Kawhi Leonard, just because he's a smaller guard. He's not a 6'6", guard. He's a 6'3". He's a little bit undersized. He's gotten stronger over the course of his career, but you still need other players to support Steph. And the Warriors are kind of thin on that. And, we'll get into that a little bit later in the pod. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next season. And I know he'll re-sign, but what's the number going to be at? Obviously, we know the length will be a year, but how does that play into the rest of their roster construction is going to be interesting.
Yeah, very. Like you said, he's worth the money. He's well deserving of it, and it puts him in the situation where 60 million is a decent chunk of that salary cap that we'll get into later in the pod as well. But he deserves it, and it just kind of puts
Yeah.
him in a situation where
You have to.
and
Yeah.
they have they're
You got to
drafting.
pay your franchise
Yeah,
star.
you have to.
Yeah.
You got to keep him around, especially what he's been able to do for the franchise. Like I said, he
No
brought
doubt.
him to relevance. You know what I mean? Like
What, bro?
Warriors, obviously, we believe Warriors.
Bro.
They've been good. Like, don't get me wrong, but
Steph Curry has 100% Hall of Fame rate today.
yes,
You know,
he
for
probably
people-
had it a couple years.
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, that's a good point.
I think he had it after that 2022 finals.
You had asked me that question, like, well, what have the Warriors really done since then? Whatever. And it's interesting you bring that up because I would have to agree. Since then, he's had a crazy career in the last couple years.
Yeah.
A lot of most players in the NBA won't have the type of career that he's had over the last 4 years, and that's not
that's
even
crazy to
that's not
yeah.
even barring the unanimous MVP. The Warriors championships. That's all pre 2020.
Yeah.
So he's had a crazy career just thinking about it now. And it's like, you're going to see those graphics where it's like after age 30 and like before. And,
Yep.
he's already a Hall of Famer, solidified. There's really not like a question mark surrounding his game that I can think of. Maybe defensively just because of his size. But Steph Curry is one of the only players in the NBA that I would say like just has no flaws really in his game, especially offensively.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, the only thing that I could probably critique is the health, but he's also 38. So it's like, what do you expect?
Can't really
like
expect that.
Like you said, he's been playing.
How many games do you think he'll play next year?
I hope he gets 65 because I really think he could be an all NBA player anytime he plays. He meets the requirements.
I agree.
If he did this, or if he had these stats, I'm assuming he would be in the mix.
I think he plays at least 60. And so for Warriors fans, like he may not be on the award
Awards,
ballot.
Yeah.
But he'll be in the mix.
I think, yeah.
And going back to the point we were talking about when he was going off against the Spurs, Steph Curry is the type of player that can give you 50 and then on a back-to-back get another 50.
Yeah.
So he's the engine to this entire team. We don't need to make a swan song about it. We're not going to talk about him for an hour.
Yeah,
but I think you guys get the point. And it's clear Steph, I mean, going back to what CJ said, $62 million a year. He's the most important piece that you want to build around for your franchise. In this case, it's the Warriors, right? Moving forward, every decision that Dunleavy, who's their GM? Yeah, it's Dunleavy. Every decision that Dunleavy makes has to be off the back of Steph Curry's championship window, which is pretty razor thin, if we're being honest. At age 38, would you say 2 more years?
I would say 2 comfortable
before he retires.
Yeah.
Like I could give or take 2 years. That's the timeline that the Warriors are on. So just be mindful of that. Where Steph Curry goes, the Warriors go, and we're rooting for you next year, man. It was tough to see them lose to the Suns. He was playing out of his mind, in the playing game. So it's always a better NBA playoffs
when Steph Curry.
Yeah. So I'll just leave it off on that.
Yeah.
But going into our next player, man, it's none other than Jimmy Butler. Jimmy came over from the Heat 2 seasons ago, but he was obviously out last year. I had the knee injury, the ACL injury. And interestingly enough, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think that might have helped him a little bit. I feel like Jimmy Butler needed a little bit of a break, was playing heavy minutes. He's a playoff riser. He was going really, really hard, and the body never lies, man. We've talked about a lot of different teams so far. I want to say this is our 10th team. We've gone through a couple players, just off the top of my head, like Cade Cunningham. Sometimes those guys are playing so many minutes, their bodies just give out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens with certain players. And I feel like that's what happened with Jimmy Butler's knee injury. So at 36 years old, though, a season and a half ago, Butler averaged 20 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 4.9 assists, giving the offense a physical downhill threat and a steady decision maker in the half court. And that's what Jimmy Butler really is and has been for his entire career. Just a consistent offensive player. And he's also extremely gifted on the defensive end, too. It's not really an underrated part of his game anymore, but when he was on the Bulls and coming up as a player, the two-way wing that everybody wants in the NBA now, Jimmy Butler has been for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And the Warriors capitalized on that. And another crazy thing about Jimmy Butler is he's a part of that category. We just got done talking about Steph Curry. Well, he's past age 35 and he's balling out, man. He's
Yeah.
averaging 20 points. He's, again, to me, 100% a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
If he were to retire today. And that's what makes the Warriors so interesting is they do have these really interesting players that, are Hall of Famers without a doubt.
Yep.
And it's just going to be interesting to see how they can build around a player like Jimmy Butler because he's made 5 All NBA teams. He's made 5 All Defensive teams. He is a special player, especially when your roster's constructed the right way. We've seen him go to the finals. We know
Twice.
twice. We know what Jimmy Butler's capable of doing. Had a 50-point playoff performance against the Bucks, which I know you remember. It was crazy, like getting the steal on Drew Holiday,
Yep.
yelling and screaming. Like that's the Jimmy Butler that the Warriors need. And still getting 20 at his age, bro. It's just what can you really say about that, man? It's very special to be able to do that at age 36. He's on a 2-year deal. It's worth roughly $112 million. I don't know how you feel about that number, especially at his age. And if we're being honest with you, I'll challenge the value here because 20 points a night is useful, but again, the health. There's some concerns in the locker room, obviously with the Heat, not necessarily with the Warriors. I haven't heard anything out of the Warriors camp that would signal that he was having issues, but he did leave the Heat
On
pretty abruptly. I know
pretty
you
bad
guys remember.
terms.
Yeah, pretty bad terms. Like he was calling them out in press conferences, whatever. How do you feel about that number? 2 years, 112.
Yeah, I think it's a lot, but
Yeah.
obviously, like you just mentioned, why Jimmy is that valuable. And whenever he is able to play in the playoffs, we've seen him make it to the finals twice. And, even when he wasn't in the finals, he was still competing at a very high level with the Heat, just a couple seasons ago. So I think if you get that out of Jimmy, whatever that looks like, if he doesn't play the, 65 games for him to qualify for all the awards and this and that, if he even gets, 60, 55, something, have him, ramp it up again towards whenever the playoffs are about to start
point.
and get him ramped up,
Going,
going
yeah.
like before that starts
rhythm,
because
yeah.
we know what
That's a
that
good
looks
point.
like. Obviously it's a lot of money, and I think for where the Warriors are at, I mean, if knock on wood, if he does get injured again, then it's another year of having to pay Jimmy Butler $50 million, and he's not providing value. But if he is in that moment, I think he's worth it, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of money for someone that is 36 years old. That is also coming off of a major knee injury. So that is my concern. But I think if he is in that playoff, environment, it's going to have the Warriors competing because we've seen what he's been able to do by himself. Him with Steph Curry now, like it's going to be a tough task to try to beat them. They're going to be competing at a very high level in the playoffs if they make it there. So
For sure. No, yeah. I've heard a lot of good things out of the Warriors camp about Jimmy Butler. Kendra Andrews, Mark Spears, shout out to you guys. You guys are the ESPN reporters for the Warriors. They've said that Jimmy's looked awesome in his rehab. I did want to kind of go back to the statement that I had made earlier a couple minutes ago about how, having a year off could help him because let's say he does get injured again. I think that mentality of tearing your right ACL, and that's the injury that he had, going through that builds a certain mentality and a mental fortitude's kind of built there. And I believe if he has a knick-knack injury to his hamstring, whatever, he's actually going to come back sooner than he would just because he's already been through a major injury. Now, I know that's kind of contradicting because if you hurt the same muscle or something, then you're probably screwed. But I think there's a mental aspect of it that kind of goes into it that people aren't thinking about. And with Jimmy Butler specifically, his late game composure, the way that he leads on the court, but also off of it. He gets guys going in practice. I've heard he's a dog in practice. He'll talk mess to you. He'll get guys going. And you can't really value that. That's not really something that's a part of a player's contract.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of something that I would say is for Jimmy Butler and why he gets paid that much. It's just because he brings some other things to the game that normally not a lot of players would bring. So all of that to say, he does have to stay healthy. I don't foresee him playing more than 60 games just because the Warriors in this situation, him sitting out a year, they're already going to take it slow with him, and they don't want to risk him getting another injury. So I don't really think he's going to make the game requirements, which does scare me. Both him and Curry are potential or they're at risk for potentially missing out on the awards at the end of the season, which would be interesting. But if he can be healthy, man, I mean, the two-way edge, the type of leader that he is, again, the consistent offensive heartbeat, like we mentioned. I mean, scoring 20 points, and I didn't mention, but he gets to the line like super effectively, bro. He shoots 86% from the line on nine or 10 free throw attempts per game. He's always top 10 in free throws attempted at least, which is something that you want, especially with an older roster. The Warriors, if I'm not mistaken, have the first or the second oldest roster in the NBA. So we talk about possessions and going fast. We'll talk about it at the end whenever we do, what they should lean into, which they work on. They can't go fast. They're not going to be able to run in transition like they used to, like the old Warriors when they would just kill teams in the break. They're not young anymore. They're going to try to run. It's still a Steve Kerr run offense. So they're still going to try to get out in transition and use some of their younger guys. But players like Jimmy Butler and Curry, they're going to have to take some possessions off. And I think he's in a position to do really well. I'm not worried about Jimmy Butler or Steph Curry. I believe, they're going to be averaging 45 points a game together. And in the NBA, you can't really name that many duos who average that. I'm thinking about the Sixers duo with Jaylen Brown and Maxey and Luka and Austin Reeves, of course, Murray and Jokic. But getting that type of scoring value in today's NBA, J-Dub, SGA, getting that type of scoring value in today's NBA, that's unprecedented. So that's Jimmy Butler's outlook. Currently this offseason, he's rehabbing his right knee because he tore his ACL. We know the type of player that Jimmy Butler is. He's already proven that to us. He did that against my Lakers. We saw the type of playoff runs that he can have, and he's a playoff riser, which is another reason why he gets paid 50-ish million per year, is they know if he is healthy during the playoffs, he gives them a chance to win, which is exactly what the Warriors need on Steph Curry's championship timeline, like we were talking about 10 minutes ago. So I like this pairing right here. I liked it when it happened, and we've seen it on the court, and it looks great because Jimmy's a great cutter. He can play off the ball as well as on the ball. Same with Steph Curry. And it's just a good pairing, man. I really like those two guys together.
Yeah, bro, the chef and the butler, bro.
There you go.
You know what I mean? We were able to see, glimpses of it throughout this season, and even, like seeing what that in the limited time that Jimmy Butler was able to play, like they
looked
dynamic.
good,
Like honestly,
they
like for their
good.
age, they're still a dynamic duo, which is kind of crazy to think. 36, 38 years old, still being able to run with
they're getting like 45 points a game, bro. Yeah.
And like you said, the thing that I really like about Jimmy's game is the fact that he does get to the line, because that's something that the Warriors struggle with. You know what I mean? Obviously, Steph Curry doesn't, really get the whistle that a superstar usually would. It's kind of crazy to think, but Jimmy Butler, though, he's attacking the rim. He's cutting,
especially
like you mentioned. He's able to help them whenever Steph Curry's getting boxed in or whatever.
Yeah, he can like initiate offense. He can he gives like Curry a break.
Yep.
Because Curry, like you were just saying, he gets fouled off the ball all the time. Sometimes they can't even have him dribble the ball up because he's getting hounded like 94 feet on the other side of the court. So yeah, Jimmy Butler is like a perfect secondary creator that you want on your team. And Warriors fans, I'm not worried about these two players. I'm more worried about the roster that's constructed around them, which we'll get into here in a second after this next player. But man, Jimmy Butler and Curry aren't the problem.
No, they've been incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah, whenever we've been able to see them play, it's been really good basketball. And it's just like you said, we're living in this generation, this era right now where these players that are older, 15 years into their career are still able to compete at a very high level.
Like career highs and stuff. Like Kawhi had a career high last year. We're seeing James Harden pop off at the end of his career. Like, it's dope to see, bro, because it makes me feel like the game is in good hands. And CJ and I don't know what the future holds, and that's kind of what makes the future scary. But I feel like in 10 years, like, people who are watching Jimmy Butler or Steph Curry, obviously, like they're just gonna be on it. So
yeah, incredible. So shout out to Jimmy. He's the second player that we believe that the Warriors are
no doubt
building around. And the last player, man, their young guy, right? Their
Yeah.
player that they just drafted in
Yes, sir.
this past
Has to be.
past year's draft. You know, the one and only Michigan's finest.
There you go.
Yaxel Lindenborg.
Summer League's finest
Summer League
too.
finest as
Yeah.
well. NCAA champion. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Come on now.
Yeah, all the accolades
All the
that you can get
accolades.
up until you start your NBA
career.
career.
Yeah, but you know, Yaxel Lindenberg Z is not being asked to carry Golden State at this moment, but he is being developed as the bridge between the current championship window and whatever comes next. And I think that's why we have him on here. You know, obviously
Has to be.
the other
Drafted
player,
him, yeah.
the other player that is on this roster that is a part of the trio, right? Draymond, probably that people were thinking we were probably gonna say him, but you know, just I was
Not
very
anymore.
high. I was gonna say I was very high on Yak. So whenever they drafted him, I think he was kind of what they're missing. You know, a young, athletic forward.
He's Draymond Green's replacement.
He's a more like athletic Draymond Green that is a
Basically.
better scorer too.
Yeah,
So
that can shoot the three. Not to say that Draymond can't. He can
right,
every once in a while.
Draymond's still
but
gonna, you know,
Yeah, he's
he's
still
gonna
doing
do
his thing.
Draymond's, you know, what he's gonna do. But
That's a good point, though.
that I think,
Because people were probably expecting Draymond
of
here.
course, yeah, that's why I was like, how to
Yeah,
look them up.
that, and I think you bring up a good point with that. Like, why wouldn't they be? Well, Draymond's 37,
Mm-hmm.
38 years old. Yaxel's 23. He's an older rookie.
He is an
but
older rookie, but I think that's kind of what
Part
they
of why,
need.
that's probably why they drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mike took him because the development is already further along, and they don't have the time to wait for somebody like a 19-year-old kid to grow into his game or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a good point. He's definitely there to be their next guy.
Yeah. No, the Warriors used the 11th pick in the 2026 draft on the 23-year-old, 6'9", 250 forward because his game already looks built for an immediate role, like you just said, Z. In his final college season, Lindenborg averaged 15.1 points and 6.8 rebounds while helping Michigan win the national championship, bro. And I think the thing with him was his versatility. You know what I mean? He was able to, we were saying, like Draymond-esque, but just a lot more polished on the offensive
Way
side of
more.
the ball. Like he's able to knock down the threes. He's able to create off the dribble. And then just what he's able to do on the defensive side of the ball as well just adds more. And that's why the Michigan Wolverines were able to win this past NCAA basketball championship. You know, just elite on the defensive side of the ball, and what they were able to do. It was incredible. So
Yeah, they were better there. And I think his size too, like 6'9", 250, super athletic. He has a
NBA
pretty,
body
pretty
already.
long wingspan as well. And I know you're about to talk about it, but yeah, what he did in summer league too. I know you can't get overexcited about summer league for the new viewers, and some of you guys probably haven't watched summer league as deep NBA fans. Summer league is like where the rookies, maybe sophomores, might play some of the G League guys. They just try to go see what you have, right? I think if you just get drafted, you come in and you do well, that matters to me. You know, like how Caleb Wilson was hooping, and the last in-person pod we did was on the Chicago Bulls, but Yaxel Lindenberg had a hell of a summer league.
yeah, bro. He left college as the Big Ten Player of the Year, a consensus first-team All-American, and an all-defensive selection. Lindenborg then became the first player to win both Summer League MVP and Championship Game MVP, averaging 14.8 points, 6.8 rebounds, and 4 assists along the way.
There you
Like
go.
you just mentioned, just seeing, I can, there's some guys right in the draft where, is that going to be able to translate? So I don't know if that's what people were thinking about Yaxel, but I kind of saw it. I feel like it's weird. I always bring it up, right? Like whenever you watch a guy in college, and I feel like if you're really tapped into a sport, you can see when someone has that like it factor, just kind of like, he's gonna do that in the league. And his game just was like that. It wasn't like they were, making set plays for him. And like, obviously they were, but it's just his ability to get to the rim and just create for himself at his size. And like you said, just the elite on the defensive side of the ball too. And just be able to replicate that in the summer league. Like you mentioned, it's, nothing to get too high on, but it's something to where these guys are competing in the NBA. And
Something to get excited about.
yeah, of course. So just seeing that translate to the summer league was incredible to see. But
I was a little shocked about how well it translated. I didn't have like a red flag on him. Let's say that. whenever the Warriors drafted him, but I did have some question marks surrounding his ability to go off the dribble, how he was going to rebound. Which again, in the championship game, he rebounded very well. Throughout summer league, he did as well. So again, the 15 and 7 points from your power forward, that's I know they were happy about that, bro. Even though, like you're saying, it's not something to completely go crazy about. It's still something to be excited on.
Exactly. His value comes from his versatility. He can rebound, defend multiple positions, move the ball, finish inside, and hit enough open threes to stay on the floor.
Yeah.
Golden State secured that upside on a 4-year, $28.1 million rookie contract with team options in the final 2 seasons, giving the franchise value, long-term control. And we just mentioned the 2 other players that they're building around are getting paid a lot of money. So being able to get the potential of getting the player that they were able to see in the summer league, translating that to the NBA, that's
yeah.
a perfect pairing. We talk about it a lot with a lot of the teams that we've discussed that have good rookies, that being on that rookie contract is huge value, especially nowadays with the CBA and all the rules that are going along with the salary nowadays. It's kind of, you need to draft really good rookies. So it's dope, because I feel like that's, especially for the Warriors and what their window is. I feel like that they're going, a lot of other teams, if this does turn successful for the Warriors, they're going to start doing that as well, drafting a little bit older players, because we know some players are staying 5 years in college now, or they're getting their bag NIL, so they're staying a little bit longer, developing in their game. And if they could go to a team that has a star and is just needing one piece, and you just happen to be that's going to be a perfect pairing. So I feel like that's going to be a strategy that a lot of teams in the future will probably replicate. So taking that swing on an older guy, but knowing that his game's a little more polished and he's NBA ready, especially Yaxel and his NBA size, 6'9", 250 already. He already has that build for the NBA.
Yeah, you're basically I think if you're in the NBA, you want a guy that's closer to his prime, especially if you're in a situation like the Warriors are in. Just if your championship timeline is so shortened, I said it a couple minutes ago, but you can't afford to draft a 19-year-old guy that's going to take 6 years to develop into his full prime. Axel Lindenberg's 2-3 years away from potentially being, a serious player in this league. And for where the Warriors are financially, also with the roster construction, with the rest of the roster that we'll go through here in a sec, it is important that they do draft guys that are, again, in the first round, second round, whatever it may be, but they're on rookie scale contracts that allow for the Warriors to have optionality when it comes to signing other guys. The new CBA doesn't mess around. The penalties are super massive for being in the first or second apron. The Warriors are way above the cap, and we'll get into that here in a second, but they need to do everything they can to create the best roster they can as quickly as possible. And the sense of urgency, I do want to stress here, because the Warriors have been a falling dynasty. That's the truth. We've seen them come and go, and obviously the Warriors got Kevin Durant, which kind of reopened their window, and the 2022 championship, that was like what if they're back? What if they're back? This season is the tipping point, in my opinion. No more messing around. This is it for the Warriors, and Steph Curry and the rest of the roster. And I think Mike Dunleavy's job is at risk. Not to say that he's done a bad job. He hasn't at all. Just him being the scapegoat, I think, is a possibility here if things go wrong. It won't be Steve Kerr. They have too much trust in him. And
Bob Myers got out at the right time.
Exactly. Bob Myers got out already, and Kerr, Myers included, but they have the championship pedigree. Dunleavy does as well, but he's the one who's making the roster decisions. It'll just be interesting to see what happens to them. Not this coming regular season, because again, they'll be in the play-in. They're going to be competitive. They'll be at the bottom of the West, but they're still going to be making some noise. But in the offseason next year, it'll be interesting to see how this list changes, if it does at all. So I'm really high on Yaxel. At this current time, he has to be the player that the Warriors are building around, more than Draymond Green, just because of his age. and the draft pick that they spent on him.
Right.
You know, a number 11 pick, that's nothing to scoff at, especially in the 2026 NBA draft class.
Yep.
So they got to hit on Yaxel for this to work.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, man, the Warriors are investing in him because he can help the veteran core now developing into a two-way foundation for the next era of the Warriors.
Yeah, man. And we'll have to see what that next era looks like. You know, I just got done talking about it, but the dynasty window to me, you know, it's at its tipping point.
Yeah.
And it's partly due to their roster, but it's also partly due to their financials. And I'm about to get into that in a second. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the Warriors end up in a year. And this is a yearly team. You know, this is not a team that has a young core that, you know, 4 years out that are, you know, we know is going to be there in 2030, whatever. This is a team that could look completely different in a season or two. So it is interesting to see the players that they're building around, you know, the analysis behind those players and how that changes over the course of the season. But let's get into their balance sheet. The way that we do this on the offseason files is we break down their cap and so their payroll, you know, what they're paying players. We break down the draft capital that they own, you know, some of their own picks that they have, and then their incoming picks from other teams. So picks that are being traded to them, and the outgoing picks, so picks that they're trading away. We break down all of that. We'll be doing the Warriors cap and balance sheet today, and it's interesting because they're not in a place that you would expect a team to be that's this old. They do have, we just got done talking about them, but two of the, you know, I'd say top 100 players in the NBA, no doubt with Steph Curry, but also Jimmy Butler. And they are commanding over $50 million still at 35 and above, which is super rare in the NBA. So they are in a bit of a peculiar situation. But yeah, man, I mean, I'm looking at their cap right now. Curry's getting 62 a year. Jimmy Butler's 56. And then Draymond, it drops off to 27, which is interesting. You know, Draymond Green is their third highest paid player. You know, would expect that they would be building around him, but not at this current stage of his career, which is interesting. But I'll get into the cap situation here. We've said this before on a couple other shows, but the cap maximum for all teams is 164 million. That number won't ever change for all 30 teams that we do. But the active cap for the Golden State Warriors is currently at 215 million, which is, you know, a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, we kind of just broke down. They have two players that are taking up 30% of the cap, which right there is already a lot. It's a huge investment to make into these two players. Obviously, Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry are worth the money, but that's why that number is so high. They currently have $33 million worth of cap holds as well. Some of those cap holds are, you know, I'm looking at Spotrac right now, but Jerome Robinson, Tarian Armstrong, Nico Mannion, David West, Anthony Lamb, Iguodala. The Warriors are oddly one of the teams that have a lot of deferred money that they still owe to players not on the roster. Those cap holds will stand, which, again, teams like the Hawks, there's other teams like we saw with the Cavs. You know, James Harden just re-signed as well. That cap hold is different. There's some teams that, like, those players are actually active.
Yeah.
The Warriors have players that are, it's called dead cap. Which means they're not active and you still owe them money, which is never a good position to be in, especially, you know, with how old that they are. It's not like they're a young roster, so that's it's not good. It's not good to have that many players that you still owe money to that just aren't on the roster.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, you know, for the audience as well, is this just bad, you know, management? Is that why they are still paying these guys this much money, or is it just the way that they went about their contracts? Like, how?
That's a good question.
Because there's players that are haven't played in years that they're
like
having
David
to pay.
West,
David
46
Iguodala,
years old.
you know, it's
it might be poor management. I don't know the contract situations because before we did this show, like Andre Iguodala was signed. Like I wasn't really thinking about it, but I believe it's bad business, to do deferred money to people that aren't going to be on the roster because you just don't know what that's going to look like in the future. And I don't believe the Warriors really were thinking about those decisions 7 years ago, but now it's starting to come to fruition. And when you do this in 2020, you're like, whatever,
right.
You know, it'll happen. It'll come onto our books in 2028. We'll deal with it then. But now it's almost 2027, 2028. You know, we're a year away from that, year and a half away from that. And these guys are still owed money. You know, they're still getting paid for not doing anything.
Right.
And that's never good business. So I don't know exactly the contract situation, like Nico Mannion, like
Right.
dude, he's playing overseas, right? So I don't know the exact contract situations of individuals specifically, but I do know whenever you see this many cap holds and it's dead cap, that's not good. So that brings up their total allocations, total cap allocations, including the cap holds with the active cap, to $249.4 million, which puts them negative $84 million into the cap. Which is they are the third most expensive team in the NBA right now, which is unreal for what they're really getting. We just got done talking about it, but two of their highest paid players are above 36 or above. You don't really want to see that if we're being honest on a balance sheet. Preferably you want your two highest paid players to be in their prime. But yeah, though it looks bleak, honestly. And that's why that timeline is so shortened for them. It's not just because their players are old, but it's also because the balance sheet doesn't look that good. And you're getting to a point where, again, you're deep into the first apron. For what though? Like a play-in exit, right? Like they're not the 4 seed in the West, you know. And this is where the landscape of the NBA comes into play, especially with the Warriors here. Realistically, the Thunder, Spurs, Lakers, Nuggets, Timberwolves, Clippers, there's a lot of not Clippers, maybe not Clippers, but there's other teams that are going to be competitive in the West.
Yes.
And it's going to make it tougher for the Warriors to find their footing. And if they go on a 8-game, 9-game losing streak, which might happen in the West, that's a death sentence, especially with, you know, they're not going to be able to aggregate salaries. They can't really trade for anyone unless they get the same money back. It's just hard for Mike Dunleavy and company to figure this out. And just being that deep into the cap is interesting. Negative $84 million. So yeah, man, it just seems like some poor management, and it's not all Mike Dunleavy's fault, right? Some of it's on Bob Myers, and that's why he might have exited.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like a lot of it, obviously, these contracts probably have been going on. You know, like you said, the dead cap has been getting paid for the last 5-6 years. So that's his doing. But like you said, I feel like he exited at the right time. You know, he's the Bob Myers brought championships to Golden State, had, you know, Clay and Steph and Draymond doing their thing, brought KD in, and now he was like, you know, he was the deuces and just faded away. You know what I mean? But
yeah, it's
interesting because this was if we're being honest, this was a tough job to really step into. You know, it's the allure of it with Stephen Curry and what he's been able to do. It's Golden State.
Can't mess it up, right?
But
it's a tough job.
It's a tough job because now you're like you just mentioned, the third highest paid roster in this league, and you're probably not gonna be really competing for a championship. Honestly, like you said, potential play-in exit.
They won't be.
It's kind of tough to really stomach having to pay that much.
No, yeah, and we kind of spoke about it, but like Kristaps Porzingis, Butler, Curry, they're all at risk of not playing more than 55 games in a season, and yeah, you just can't be paying for that. So some of the draft capital that they do own is they do own their 2027, their 2028, their 2029, their 2030, their 2031, their 2032, and their 2033 first round picks. That is a good W.
Shout out
That's
to that.
a W.
Yeah, I would say you didn't trade away your future.
No, and you know, first round picks are starting to become a little more wishy-washy with the 3-2-1 lottery rule, which essentially states that you can't have a top 5 pick in back-to-back years, so you can't suck in the NBA anymore, which is going to make the regular season more fun. I think the Warriors could deal some of these picks in the future. It is nice to have a war chest of your first-round picks, and you know, for example, my team, I'm a Lakers fan over here. We have no first-rounders, so just to put it into perspective, it is important to have that many firsts all the way through 2033. So I like it there. Nothing too crazy. And yeah, I think, again, like there's going to be some teams that have unhealthy balance sheets, but they might have their first round picks. I don't think having your first round picks guarantees you a healthy balance sheet. So I do want to say that because we just got done talking about their cap situation. So I think your payroll and your draft capital have to work together to give you that healthy balance sheet.
Right.
But getting into their second rounders, they do have a 2030 second round pick, 2032 second round pick, and a 2033 second round pick. So less second rounders, but they're second rounders. Some of the outgoing picks that they're sending away to other teams in 2027, they're sending a second rounder to Philly or Washington. In 2028, they're sending a second rounder to Boston or Philly. In 2029, they're sending a second rounder to Brooklyn. In 2030, they're sending a first rounder to Memphis if it's in between 21 or 30, picks 21 or 30. They will send that first rounder to Memphis. They're also sending a second rounder to Memphis in 2030 if the first round pick does not convey. So if it doesn't fall in between 21 or 30, they'll send them a second round pick to pay for that charge because Memphis obviously wants a first rounder, but the Warriors are going to have to pay up if it doesn't fall there. 2031, they're sending a second rounder to Chicago or Detroit. And then in 2032, they're sending a second rounder to Memphis if it's in between picks 51 and 60. So they do have some movement there, all the way out until 2032. I see a lot of second rounders. There is one first round pick in 2030 that, again, in 2030, the Warriors probably will be in the lottery.
Yeah.
That's if Curry is gone, if Butler's not fully healthy. There's a lot of ifs there, but maybe they're good. Who knows? But most likely, Memphis is going to get a second rounder out of that. I don't see the Warriors falling in between 21 or 30. So, yeah, pretty much all second rounders there. Nothing too crazy. They're not sending four first round picks. We did the Cavs draft, and Utah owns their draft, right? All their first rounders. So just to give you guys a perspective of, the Warriors have a pretty clean draft capital chest there. So we'll get into their incoming picks. They actually have none, so it's pretty short there. They don't have any incoming picks from other players, or other teams, which is interesting. They're not trying to build on this roster at all. And partly they can't trade picks just because they have to make money work. So it's rare that you see in the NBA now a pick for a pick. It's pretty rare. Usually there's a player involved in that. And the reason they don't have any incoming picks is just because it's hard to aggregate salaries being that deep into the first apron. And so, yeah, man, I think their tax bill we'll get into here in a second. But, yeah, their draft capital's pretty good if you had to ask me. I mean, outside of the second rounders that are being sent away, and you can feel a way about those if you have an opinion on them. I don't really care about second round picks in the NBA, so those don't really matter to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have their first rounders. It seems like they've done a good job of keeping their draft in house.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's the, like you were saying, the 3-2-1 rule is going to switch up the way a lot of the people value or teams value first round picks. But I feel like with the Warriors, I don't think they're going to be that bad every single year. So they'll more than likely have their future picks. So we'll see what that, turns into. But, like you said, they have Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler as of right now. So they have that potential of, not being in that mix of potentially losing or whatever ends up happening with the 3-2-1 rule, whatever they end up doing that. But I think, since they do have a lot of these first round picks, I feel like, obviously they are deep into the tax, so it's going to be tough. But I think they should potentially try to move these picks.
I agree.
Get a player on their rookie contract that has been balling out. So potentially get a piece, and they have all their first round picks, so they have the ability to do that if that's in their future. But that's obviously if everything pans out, and kind of the things that we discussed earlier in the pod. If that. Yeah,
I could see that for sure. And that's a good point. If you have the first round picks to move, then you should look into doing that at least. I mean, at least play with the idea. You don't have to do it, but for the Warriors situation, it really doesn't really hurt them to look into it just because of how old they are, what their timeline is, and everything like that. But their tax situation, this is going to be their tax bill. So we talked about their payroll, $215 million that they currently pay for their entire roster. So the tax threshold is $200 million. Like I just said, they currently pay $215 million for their current roster. So they don't have any dead tax money. So their total tax is $215 million. they have negative $15 million of tax space because the tax threshold is $200 million. And their estimated tax bill is going to be $56 million because they are in the first apron. They have about $5.2 million of second apron space left. So if they spent $5 million more, they would be in the second apron. I don't like it, man. Going back to what we said on the first part, I know their draft capital looked good, and that's kind of why we just went through it. But looking at it holistically, like together, it's just the payroll's too expensive for me. And Kristaps Porzingis is getting paid $20 million, Moses Moody 12, Horford 6. Like you're really betting on those guys to be pretty valuable. And Moses Moody's got hurt.
Yep.
Al Horford's Time Lord, right? But at some point he's gonna slow down.
Yeah.
Kristaps Porzingis, you can't really guarantee he's gonna play more than 50 games.
Yeah.
There's so many question marks surrounding this roster. So with that being said, CJ and I have to give the Warriors a balance sheet rating of unhealthy. We've spoken about it a lot. They're deep into the first apron. We've talked about their payroll and obviously the top two players, what they're getting paid. It's 30% of the cap. And so, yeah, it's the Warriors. They do have an unhealthy balance sheet. They got Steph Curry on their team, so there's some hope with that as always. But yeah, it's not looking too good whenever you do peel back the layers at this moment.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's tough to really give them anything more than that, just based off of how deep they are into the luxury tax, being one of the top paid rosters,
top 5 paid rosters in the NBA,
and not really being able
they're not a solidified playoff team.
Yeah,
and that's just the truth. At this moment in time, their roster in the West isn't a competitive playoff team. So, it's I think if you're a Warriors fan, you have to look on the bright side. You have to see that you have all your first rounders. You still have a couple players that can make an impact, especially at a high level in this league. And that's not something that you can take for granted, but you do have to recognize that the future is a part of your franchise. You can't just think about the present and just forget about the future. So, yeah, I'm interested to see like what you think they can lean into, what you think they should work on. And then we'll get into the team rating for the people.
For sure. Yeah. Kind of going off of that, I'll start with what I think they need to work on. I think they need to work on, developing a lot of their players, because I feel like that's been the thing with Steve Kerr, right? We know he's an incredible coach and this and that, but very questionable rotations at times. And I feel like we've seen that with the whole situation that happened with Kuminga. You know what I mean? He walked. They didn't want to re-sign him, and obviously they're already deep into the tax, so it would have been tough for them to swallow that pill. But they just didn't give him the opportunities to really show what he's worth. So, I think the third guy that we said they're building around, Yaxel, right? Like Steve Kerr is in a situation where he needs to play these young guys. So hopefully. That's my fault. That's what I think they should lean into.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, yeah.
I misworded that, but
Yeah,
I believe
I was like picking that up.
Yeah, I believe they should lean into developing their youth and developing a good bench, because we know what they're going to get out of Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler if they're healthy, and if they make the playoffs, we know what we're going to get. But what we don't know is what you mentioned, a lot of these question marks, and that has to do with the younger players on this roster, like the Pods and Yaxel and Santos, like we just mentioned. He's a really good player, but just giving these guys more run, I think just it may not equate to a lot of wins, but I feel like if you have Steph Curry on the floor, it gives you the ability to win these games. And if you have the youth with him, running next to him, building the confidence throughout the whole year, then that could be dangerous for potential matchups in the play. And if they are in there, or even if they make the playoffs, if it ends up turning, everything clicks and they are able to play these young guys and they're providing a lot of value for what they're equating to what they're being paid, outplaying their value. So I think that's something that they should lean into, the development of their younger players and just their bench depth.
I like that. I think the depth aspect for sure the Warriors need to hit on. And their player development over the last couple years has been really interesting, right? Like dating back to the James Wisemans of the world, Jonathan Kuminga, even Moses Moody has been a project that I would say has worked out pretty good for the Warriors. For me, they need to lean into, let's see, because they have some good things going for them. One thing I liked about their season last year is the amount of threes they were taking, and the Warriors have always shot threes since Steve Kerr has been their coach, but I think this season specifically, it's going to be really important to do that at a high level, and it's going to give them a chance to be competitive. If Pods can figure out his 3-point shot more consistently, and we've seen at times the stretches he'll go 40% from three, and then he'll go 20%. There's other guys like Guy Santos who can shoot the lights out. Al Horford's a great shooting big. They have Kristaps Porzingis, who's a great shooting big. Kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, I think their depth and like their rotations and everything. I just think they have to go guns blazing. I think they should try to lead the league in 3-pointers attempted, just because that's the only viable way that I see them competing for anything. I don't think they're going to outrun teams. They're not going to be more athletic than teams. They're not going to have better defense. So it's offense all the way pretty much. And I don't think Steve Kerr will be a stranger to that. And the Warriors fans probably like hearing me say that. Because I just believe if the Warriors can lead the league in 3-pointers attempted and get some shots up, get possessions up, and that might play into playing faster, because the faster you play, the more possessions you get. And so I'll counteract that by saying the more threes you hit, the less possessions you need, because you're getting more points per possession. So it'll have to balance itself out. They'll have to figure out a way, and Steve Kerr's up for the challenge. They'll have to figure out a way with an old roster to run when possible, especially in transition. Hitting transition threes has always been something the Warriors are really good at. Losing track of Steph Curry in transitions, like, I don't know, it's a one-way ticket to hell, pretty much. So, yeah, I believe they should lean into their 3-point shooting. I really liked that last year, and I think that's something that they should continue to build off of. But going into something that they should, improve on, what's one thing that you think that they need to work on? It can be roster related, but it can also be balance sheet related.
Ooh.
If you have like a trade or
I mean, a trade ideally, but I just can't think of one. But I'll
not
go
like
something,
a player,
right. But I'll go into like kind of just what I think for the roster situation. Just, I mean, you mentioned it, right? You don't really think they're going to be one of the best defensive teams, and I think that's something they need to lean on. They don't, or something they need to work on, right? They don't need to be an elite defense, but I think, like you mentioned, when you are running in transition, making threes, it's a higher pace, so they are an older roster. So if they do that, it kind of counteracts the defensive side. But I don't even think they need to be one of the best. I think it's just being connected, and like how we mentioned, a lot of these great defensive teams are all in a string, and I feel like kind of going back to what made them a championship caliber roster year in and year out back in 2010s, like going back to that, I think that's what they need to work on, just the defensive side of the ball. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I actually, mine was rebounding. Last year they ran a lot of small ball lineups. The Warriors are king of small ball lineups. That is starting to not work in the NBA today. Want to know why? Wemby, Chet's of the world, Jokic, obviously. But there are really, really big teams. The Warriors are bigger, but for some reason they don't get a ton of rebounds. Kristaps Porzingis isn't the best rebounding center. Yaxel Lindenberg is good. I think he's a better rebounder at the forward spot, but Al Horford isn't going to grab a ton of boards. Draymond Green does rebound well, but they need better rebounding. I mean, and I think that goes along with their defense as well, like defensive rebounding, but also on offense, just to give them a chance to get more extra possessions. That was something the Warriors used to be really good at. And I know you remember, they would miss a three, get the rebound, miss a three, get the rebound, and then they would hit the three. And that's not really something I see anymore. It's very one and done basketball. And when I watched the Warriors last season, that was something that you'll see in the stats too. Middle of the pack defensive rebounding. I'm not sure what their offensive rebounding rate is off the top of my head, but I believe if they can improve on that aspect, they will get more possessions. They'll also have better opportunities just to capitalize on the situation throughout the game, because I've been watching the Warriors basketball for like the last year and a half pretty closely, because I'm starting to see the end of a dynasty, and I'm trying to like soak it in, because pretty much Steph Curry's been hooping throughout my life, and like we're coming up on the twilight zone. So just seeing them rebound the ball better would be good for them. I think the threes, if they can lean into that, if they can shoot a lot, and then they can improve their rebounding, I think they'll be middle of the pack. Like they'll be a playoff team if they do those two things.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that because, like you said, that is what made the OG Warriors team so elite.
So dangerous, bro.
Even defensive.
I know you remember that. Like,
yeah,
miss, grab it, Curry's
kick it out to
cutting
Curry.
out.
Yeah, or Curry's not hitting it. You see Clay open in the point. Like
bro.
it's just that, like you said, just having the opportunity when you have a player at Steph Curry's level and ability to be able to shoot it from anywhere on the court. It's just you have to. And then, like you said, on the defensive side of the ball too, just being able to close out possessions and not having to deal with multiple possessions on that side. And like we mentioned, keep bringing up, they're an older team, so they're gonna get more gas. They're not as young as they used to be. Like we keep bringing up, so I like that. That's a good one
for sure, man. Well, all of that being said, we went through the 3 players that they're building around. We went through their their draft capital and their payroll and their cap situation. But we like to give team grades over here on the offseason files at 3-Man Weave. And CJ and I both think that the Golden State Warriors team grade is a C+ for the current state of the roster, which, that's pretty on par. We gave the Nets a C+. There's a couple other teams we've given a C+, but currently the Warriors are not a solidified playoff team. They also have an unhealthy balance sheet. Those two things, to me personally, I also know, I'll let you speak for yourself, but those two things for me personally is why their grade is so low. The way that the roster is currently constructed, they're one of the oldest teams in the NBA as well, which is also, it's not something that we're grading hard on, but when you think about a dynasty and kind of the players that teams are building around and things like that, you want younger players rather than older. So that's also another knock on the Warriors. They're one of the oldest teams in the league, and we've said that a lot throughout this pod. But yeah, just a culmination of things lead up to that rating. And last season, I believe it played out on the court. You guys kind of saw they were playing, probably not a playoff team, but they could compete in that realm. And that's sort of where we see the Warriors next season being. I mean, I don't think they'll win more than 45 games. It depends on the health, but I don't think they'll be healthy. And that's, again, it's in the future. I don't know if they'll be healthy or not. I can't say that for sure because I'm not a genie. I wish I was. I probably wouldn't be here. The government would have locked me up by now. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like if I could predict the future, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, but, I would not be here.
Yeah, but just, from what we can see,
right.
Barring the future or anything like that, currently it's a C+.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Just because we mentioned all the good, right? But I feel like we also bring up the bad, and I feel like that is what's so special about the offseason files, because we talk very highly of the teams and what they're doing good at and what they should lean into, right? But we really hone in onto what they need to work on, and that we brought it up: the age, the contracts, the question marks on the roster, rebounding, defense, but you have Steph Curry.
Exactly.
And that's the
saving grace.
Yeah, saving grace of what the Warriors are at. So yeah, you gotta still put them in the mix. They're not a D ranked team or even a C-. They're still in that caliber of being very competitive, like we were able to see last year. It just is a lot of factors are gonna be brought into that equation, and we'll see what that looks like. But like you said, I'm not really expecting them to win a lot of games because I think they're just not going to be healthy. But even if they aren't, I think it's seeing the development of their younger guys, and obviously Steph Curry, just have him do his thing, but don't force it, or maybe sitting on a back-to-back. It's trying to prepare for.
They will do that.
They'll do that.
Sure.
So it's stuff like that. So that C+ for sure. Like you mentioned, the Nets are in that same boat, and they may not have as high tiers players, but just where their contract is, and like you said, that's
cap is
clean. We take that into consideration when we give these teams the ratings. So yeah, I agree. C+ is a good spot for them because we know what they can be, but obviously they have a lot to do and to work on in their books, and we'll see what that looks like. Like you said, just being one of the oldest team and also one of the highest paid teams, it's usually not a recipe for success, especially if you are, you have one of the greatest players of all time.
And your championship timeline is
very
razor thin.
Very
so,
thin.
Warriors fans, we're excited to see what the Golden State Warriors do next season. But CJ, are you ready to close this book on the Golden State Warriors offseason file?
I am, man. I feel like it was a great one.
Awesome, man. Well, that's going to do it for the boys over here at 3-Man Weave. We appreciate you guys for rocking out with us. I mean, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. The website is currently under some maintenance right now, but the link will be in the description. You'll be able to scroll through, see all these off-season files, nice and organized for you. So if you're a basketball nerd, please check that out. And like I said, we appreciate you guys' time. We'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Peace. 3-Man, 3-Man, 3-Man.
Yes.
Yeah. Come on, man.
That is a banger, man.